Hello, everyone. Welcome to Decoding What Clients Really Are Thinking and What Clients Really Want. I'm so grateful for Celine, Teoh, and Agnes Lee for doing this session today. They can introduce themselves. They got an amazing background. Celine and Agnes, over to you.
All right. Will, thank you so much. Agnes and I are so happy to lead this with you. We're super excited. We've actually already sent our introductions, I think, via email, and we've got tons planned for today. So we're going to skip the intro, if that's okay, and then go straight into the presentation. Agnes, what do you think? Good?
That sounds great. Yeah.
All right. With that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share screen.
Do you want to lead us into first get a breathe?
Yeah, I'll do that, and then I will lead us in that breathing. Thanks, Will. You already took us through the welcome. Why don't we spend some time arriving and breathe? Most of us are busy. We're transitioning from another activity, or we're about to go into a super busy day. It's been crazy this start of the year. Let's do a quick hack. Take 3 deep breaths. Feel free to close your eyes. I'm going to start. And just let go of anything that's outside this room. And set it all aside. Turn off your devices. And welcome everybody. Before we begin, let me turn this to slideshow. Before we begin, a few things to note. 1, let's experiment. I'm encouraging all of you to participate. The more we participate, the more we learn. Questions, plonk them in the chat. We'll answer them in the chat. One of us will. If we can't, we'll answer them live. If that doesn't work and time is too short, we'll answer them in emails after. So anything that pops into your head, stick it in the chat. Next, context matters. This entire presentation is based on our Agnes and our context, which is US-based. It's very egalitarian. It assumes that everybody's kind of equal, and it's very specific. So we're like honing in on details. The context might be different where you're from, where you're sitting, where your client is. So keep that in mind. Feel free to adjust what we're saying based on what your experience is of your client and yourself. Lastly, the presentation will be shared after, so you don't have to take notes. Okay. So we're curious, what brings you here today? Now enter into the chat. Why do you want to know how clients, what clients really want? Like, how's that going to help you with your practice? And yes, will you take a look at what people are saying?
I'll do that and maybe name some of them. Yeah. Don't be shy.
What's it worth?
Okay, yeah, Julie talks about better be able to deliver on expectations. Benjamin always like to learn more and improve skills. I love that learning mindset.
So important for independent consultants.
Yeah, Giovanni talks about curiosity and active listening. Wow, some of my favorite skills, and we can always learn more. Cyril, yeah, something you just don't want to tell you and say, tell me about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You want more tactics, more strategies. Mm-hmm. Love it. Yeah, so let me do the big unveil right here. It's all about taking into account the emotional side of the equation. So as consultants, we tend to think about the problem in a rational way. We tend to approach it starting from here. But clients and us make decisions based on emotions and underlying needs. We're never, this is about 20%, this is 80%, no matter what people say. So as an example, I once, as a fresh associate, went to the head of Gap men's apparel division. And I had done this amazing analysis about why we should not launch a particular product. And I walked him through it. Analysis was watertight. I was like, this is great. It's going to convince him. And he looked at me and he said the quiet part out loud. And he said, Celine, it's great analysis, but I don't like the numbers. Can I just ignore it? And I was flummoxed. product got launched. I hadn't taken into account the fact that he really, really wanted to do this for all his hidden reasons. So how many of you have been in that situation? Does that resonate? Oh, yes. So today, what we're going to be talking about is how do you handle the emotional side of the equation? So let me actually flip this. Slides is a weird way of showing videos. Let me show you a video that might resonate.
We're not hearing it.
You're not
Celine.
hearing it? All right,
No.
something is wrong with this.
You might have to unshare first.
Yeah, I'm going to
and then
unshare
share again.
and reshare.
Yeah, with the
It's funny,
audio
I shared it with the sound, but it's still technical difficulties. Let's start again.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's gonna stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever gonna stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing.
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See,
out.
you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just.
Don't.
Try to see things my way.
Okay. Who resonated with that? That happens a lot. Like, as consultants, we want to fix things. And because we're the experts, the answer is always looking at us right in the face, right in the head. And the problem is the client's not there yet. And so what we need to do is listen and connect. And then, maybe then they'll let us take the nail out of their head. But doesn't happen before that. So the key to the emotional side, what do we have to do? I think somebody said it. Was it Cyril? Listening and empathy. Listening and empathy. And you've heard it many, many times before. But you've heard it many times before. And many of you are probably thinking, oh, great, touchy-feely stuff. But the challenge is, if my slides would advance. Yes, empathy is very soft. It's a little woo-woo. What we're talking about here is what Chris Voss calls tactical empathy. And we love this definition. It's listening to understand another person's perspectives and feelings and make them feel understood with the clear purpose of building trust and influencing them. So it's not just empathy for empathy's sake. That's great for like personal relationships, but this one is for building trust and influencing them. So it's super practical empathy. Well, today what we'll do in order to get there is we'll take you through some empathy misses, some hacks that are easy to implement, and then you'll get to practice in role plays.
Celine, do you want to talk, just mention really quickly who's a Chris Voss? Some people may not know.
Yeah, Chris Voss, he's a former FBI lead negotiator. He's the author of a book called Don't Split the Difference. And he's the head of a group called the Black Swan Group. They focus on negotiations, and they focus very much on like taking all of the little tips and tricks that he learned in hostage negotiation and applying them now to all sorts of life situations. So he's extremely practical, extremely hard-nosed, and drives results. That's why we like him. It's touchy-feely, but touchy-feely with a purpose. Thanks, and yes. All right, so listening. With a purpose, sorry, water bottle dropped, with a purpose, and also there's data backing it up. So there's lots of research that explains why listening and empathy is important. We're just going to share one piece with you. The time required to reach resolution is cut in, conflict resolution is cut in half when each negotiator agrees before responding to just repeat what the previous speaker said, nothing else. Time's cut in half. Can you imagine what that would do for our negotiations? So we were looking, Agnes and I, for hacks like that. What would move the needle on your ability to actually understand the customer and give them what they need? Agnes, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about just how challenging sometimes doing empathy can be.
Yeah, so empathy seems again simple, but sometimes it's not always easy to implement, and we tend to default to different ways of doing it. And so we listed some of the 10 empathy misses that are common. Brené Brown mentions them. Nonviolent communication also mentioned them. So it's different sources. But here are some of them. Sin, can you go to the next slide? And I think consultants in general tend to focus on the first four. So fix it, interrogate, tell a story, and defend it. That doesn't mean that we don't necessarily do the other ones, but those are probably the ones that we tend to do in business settings. And then we'll just do a fun game to guess, if you can, I'll give you some examples and see if you can guess which type of miss it is. Yeah, that'd be a way. So let me pull out my cheat sheet. Okay, I'm going to name one and then put in the chat if you think it's fix it, interrogate, tell a story, or defend it. Yeah. Okay. Have you tried increasing the density of product on store shelves to boost sales per square foot? I think you should do this.
Fix it.
Yeah.
Everybody saw it. Fix it.
That's probably the default one, right? I mean, I think all of us kind of know what that one is. Okay. I know your situation. It reminds me of a project my firm once did around SKU rationalization. What do you think that is?
Tell a story.
Yeah. And, as consultants, of course, we bring our different experiences, and it's not a bad idea to kind of mention some of the things, our track record and things that we've done before. But I think it's important to make sure the timing, right? Are we empathize enough about our client, and do we understand enough? Do we have enough information about what their situation is before we kind of divert the limelight on us and our track record? Okay, let me share another one. I understand, but last quarter when we developed the strategy, it was based on all the information we had available at the time,
Defend.
Defend. Yeah. So again, I think that sometimes we're so vetted on a certain strategy that we have, that when there are things that come up and people are resistant, we double down on it. And so, be able to listen to them and acknowledge some of the resistance before we're able to address some of the things that are coming up might be helpful. And then one more. Which year did this revenue shortfall occur? Was the driver reduction in initial signups or drop up in retention?
Interrogate.
Yeah. So again, I say as consultants, we used to here's the problem, and we go in with a lot of questioning and kind of try to dig in. And so we fixate a little bit on, again, the rational data and situation without taking into account a little bit more about especially if some emotions are showing up, some resistance, some concerns, some worries, being able to, again, empathize and listen and dig deeper around those things before we go in and get into, again, the situation. Great. Well, you guys did wonderful. So I know those are tend to be misses. And so now we'll talk a little bit more about the hacks, and things that might be helpful to do when clients come up with some of the emotional side of the problem. So we came up with 3 hacks based on our research and experience. And they are hack number 1, mirror. Number 2, label. Number 3, request. And we'll go through each one separately. But mirror is about repeating 1 or 2, 3 words from the last thing the client says. It's actually one of the hacks that Chris Voss talks about. People have different versions of it, but we really like the simplicity of the one that Chris mentions. Hack number 2 is labeling. So it identifies the client's feelings and needs, especially when there's some heightened emotions. You really want to be able to name some of the things that are happening. And the third is request. What is the action that the client wants, right? So that's helpful to need. What does it need in this moment? And again, don't be fooled by the simplicity. They're elegant and easy to remember, but sometimes they're not always easy to implement. So let's go into hack number 1. Celine, do you want? Okay. Mirror. And so as I mentioned, it's repeating the last 3 words said by the client with a curious upward inflection. So what does that look like? So let's say I'm saying, we're contemplating a bigger China presence. And you're like, bigger China presence? It's a way to say, tell me more, right? Which is our 3 beautiful words, tell me more. But by repeating the words that the client says, you're actually activating what we call in neuroscience mirror neurons. And it helps to build a rapport and say, wow, yeah, I understand you, I'm following you. Yeah. So why is that helpful? One is to help data gathering. So it encourages the speaker to say more. It builds rapport by what I mentioned, activating the mirror neurons. And then in heightened emotional situations, it helps them actually to calm them down. So Celine and I talk a lot that she has teenagers and pre-teenage, and I have a pre-teenagers, and you should, if people have teenagers, you should try them. It actually really works. Okay. I wonder whether we should try a little bit to see what it might look like, and be a little bit playful. So Celine is going to share a little bit about her puppy. She has a new puppy. And then I want to see if there's a volunteer in the audience who wants to see, try to mirror by repeating some of the last 3 words. Is there a volunteer? Raise your hand. Let's see. Okay, Benjamin. Yay. Thank you. All right. So Celine, go for it. Talk about your puppy.
Okay. Hi, Benjamin. So I recently got a puppy, and he's cute, but he's kind of a handful.
Handful.
Let me pause. Benjamin, will you say that again with an upward inflection, like a handful?
A handful.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. He's a poodle, and for some reason he's figured out. When you get a poodle, everybody says, oh, they're really smart dogs, but they just don't tell you exactly how smart. So he's learned how to open all of the baby gates in the house.
He's opened all the baby gates.
Open all the baby gates?
Opened all the baby gates.
Oh my God, yes. I'll be in a meeting like this one, and I wouldn't be surprised if he trots in and he loves like all kinds of stuff, socks, underwear.
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah. And you can also play with, I noticed that you're using phrases from the middle. That's a little bit advanced. Try using stuff from the very end. So like underwear.
Okay. Got it.
Or maybe you didn't want to say that.
I wanted to take into account everything, and if I just said underwear, I felt like I didn't take into account everything else you said.
Ah, that's interesting. So you're trying to take in the totality of what someone says. the nice thing, I would think about a conversation like a flywheel, right? Let's say you're rowing, if any of you are rowers and you use a concept two or any ergs, a conversation is like a wheel. What you're doing is you take the end of it and you just tap it. You tap it a little bit and it keeps it going.
Celine,
So-
I also want to mention that Benjamin is advanced. So
Yes, that's correct. It's an advanced move to
It's an
use the
advanced
middle
move.
because it means that you're able to pick up what the most important thing is. So you've gone to 102, Benjamin. 101 is take the last 3 words and just repeat that. As you get better at it, then you can start thinking, okay, well, the client said, usually they'll say a whole bunch of stuff, especially if you're doing it right, they'll say a whole bunch of stuff. And then if you're good, you can pick out which bits are the most important to get them to keep that flywheel going. If not, and you're just starting out, last few words.
Last few words.
Yes, last few words, but that's good. He did steal my son's underwear and was prancing around and wouldn't let it go. So that was a little bit of a scene, like a comedy, like us chasing him. And yes, do you think this is?
Yeah. Thank you, Benjamin, for being so playful.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And did you notice the difference when he went? He was affirmative, and when he also kind of upward interrogation. Benjamin, I don't know if you felt the difference.
I didn't feel the difference from an audience perspective. For me, it feels a little more unnatural unless I really have questions. If I'm just trying to push the flywheel, I don't inflect my voice as much. But I don't know how it felt from an audience perspective, what the difference was.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from the audience, and then I'll tell you how it felt from a speaker perspective.
Is there someone from the audience who wants to share? Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, just so from my standpoint, it was better when you had an inflection. When you made a statement, it didn't feel as much like the person needed to follow up and continue on. So I felt the flywheel moving more with the inflection.
Thank you.
Benjamin, I'll give feedback also that I also felt when your tone went down that I could stop. And so but it depends on the context. In some cultures, I know you have less of a serious upward inflection at the end of a sentence, but maybe use whatever techniques that you use within your culture or that's natural to you in order to encourage curiosity, to express curiosity.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Great. Thank you so much for playing with us.
Thank you, Benjamin. Thanks, everyone.
Celine, do you want to go to hack number 2?
Yes, I will. All right. So hack number 2. Hack number 2 is labeling. How do you do this? You say, it sounds like, and then you guess at the underlying need. So an example is, it sounds like it's important to you that this part of the project is finished in a month, where the underlying need is efficiency. Or it sounds like you want to make sure that your department owns the relationship with the consumer, where the underlying needs are autonomy or power or status. So it sounds like I'll come back to this. Why do we do this? Why label? Because needs and feelings are universal. It's easier to understand someone if you understand their needs. All the words are dressing. Really, what you want is the needs. So if you label, you're revealing your understanding. And at the same time, because it's an upward inflection, you're asking for corrections from the client. You're not saying, I understand you completely, because some people will, their hackles go up when you say that. You're like, no, I think I'm hearing that I understand this, ? They're like, yes, fantastic, you keep going. No, okay, tell me more, right? Common client needs that are workplace friendly. Things I see a lot are effectiveness, efficiency, autonomy is a big one, especially if they're senior, status, safety, surprisingly, safety and trust are really huge for clients. And sometimes they want the consultant to fill those needs.
Celine, just want to ask in the, is other ones that people are seeing when you're dealing with clients? What are some of the kind of triggers or things that are needs that you are seeing that are important for them?
This is Astrid. So I think it's similar to the labeling that you're using, saying it sounds like, but I did actually early in my marriage, something called Imago Therapy, where you actually mirror your partner. And so one of the things that we that I learn is, and I use with my clients, is what I think I heard from you is, did I get that right? And that to me definitely triggers like the trust, but also the fact that I'm not going to be this consultant that's just going to show up and, you know, like it's my way or the highway. Like it's going to be very collaborative.
Great. Astrid, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, it's a version of what we're saying. It sounds like it's a shortcut, but there's many versions, and yours is absolutely a great tool, a great way of saying what I heard you say is, and then kind of confirm that. Yeah, I love it. Thanks for sharing.
Okay. Yes, and yes, should I keep going?
Yeah.
All right. So when we ask people to...
DC is asking a little bit about status. Do you want to talk a little bit about status?
Yeah, some people, so status is things like your position. Somebody just came into a new role and they're at a pretty senior level, and they're worried that if their performance goes down, or if they, you know, they go into a group meeting with all the other VPs or SVPs and they mess up for whatever reason, that their status in the organization is going to drop. So that's one thing that we see. And it's actually an interesting need, because it's not very okay to say it out loud. I'm worried about my status. I'm worried about my pay. I'm worried about my promotion. But all of those, even though they're very apparent at lower levels, are still really apparent at higher levels, or still very present at higher levels. They're just a little bit more hidden. So if you as a consultant can see that in your clients, because they're all still people, addressing those needs sometimes without calling them out, and we'll get into this in this slide, it can be very, very good at building trust with the client and getting them to divulge more to you. Does that answer your question? And I can't see, unfortunately.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. All right, so labeling, we wanted to spend a bit of time on labeling, because labeling is one of those pieces where we feel the literature just drops people. You know, there's a lot of guidance around, like, here's exactly how you mirror, and then after that they'll say label, and when they say label, they'll say go ahead and label feelings, and then I'm like, how the hell do I label feelings? I don't know how to label feelings, or I can't do all this touchy-feely stuff at work. What am I supposed to do? I can do it with my son, I can do it with my husband, but I don't know how to do it with a VP of engineering over there. So we actually pulled together, this page is like money. This page pulls together a whole bunch of research around how do you actually do empathy at work, right? So first tip, use business-friendly labels. So you say concerned instead of scared. Number two, you remove the words feelings and needs. So instead of saying, like classic, you know, are you feeling frustrated? You say, are you frustrated? Right? Or you turn the label word into a phrase. Instead of saying you need fairness, you want fairness, you say you want to make sure that all the stakeholders get to weigh in. And then you add softeners. It's like, so perhaps question mark. So it sounds like perhaps you're concerned about, and it leaves space for them to correct you, and it feels less like you're kind of like saying, I'm labeling your feeling right there. So this is helpful when you're worried about, you know, doing classic, if any of you have done, say, the training that Astrid, you did, or that you've done nonviolent communication on any of the other frameworks, a lot of that stuff is just very hard to bring into the workplace. And all the examples are about talking with somebody, you know, on a personal relationship basis. This is how you bring it into the workplace. Let me advance. Here are the questions we get. What if I get it wrong? What if I label a need and they're like, no, sorry. Well, that's okay. They'll correct you, right? Especially if you asked it with a curious upward inflection. And your guess will sometimes make them think. A question for the advanced people among us, like, what happened to labeling feelings? Because you notice we said label needs, like autonomy or respect. Why didn't you label feelings like aggravated or angry? Like, feelings are often less acceptable than needs in work settings. That's a generalization, but in certain situations, like if you're with a nonprofit client, it might be more acceptable to talk about feelings. But if you're talking with a financial institution, probably best to hold off, right? Next question that we get is, do I have to do this? And the answer is just enough. You go slow, right? When we're in a work and a business setting, purpose trumps connection. We're not there to just build a relationship. We're building the relationship in order to do something. So just create the minimum amount of connection you need to enable the purpose. And if it seems like they're enjoying it, you can go further. Now, the only exception to this is repair. If you need to repair a relationship, let's say that the client's insanely angry, you're going to lose this deal, or you messed up, something needs to be fixed. In that case, keep labeling, label again, until they've got it all out. Yeah, we've created a cheat sheet for consultants with more details and more tips and feelings and need words for you to use. We'll have those as a resource after this is done too.
I'll put it in the chat as well.
Thanks, Agnes.
Yeah, and then I just want to mention, Alison made a great comment. She talked about David Rock's model, SCARF. That's something we were like wondering whether to include or not. So he's a little bit advanced, but we'll put it as a chat, as a resource as well. But David Rock talks about 5 elements that to keep in mind, that those elements are the things that kind of tend to trigger social threats. And so status is one of them, since we talked about it, but there's other things like fairness, certainty, and other things like that. So we'll put that as a chat. So as you enter clients, to keep in mind, again, those are needs and things that those might trigger social threats. So you have to think about, from a client perspective, how do they feel around those elements?
Yeah. Agnes, who mentioned SCARF?
Sorry?
Agnes, who was
Alison.
That was me. That was me, Alison. Hi. Yeah.
Oh, Alison, that's pretty advanced. But yeah, David Rock's SCARF model is a fantastic.
I'm a brain science geek, and I actually incorporate some of that into some workshops that I do with leaders, just because it's such an impactful model that makes a lot of sense for people once they understand what it is. And I added in the chat that you can obviously also use them as motivation, because if you can play to the need, and they have a status need, then you can really get in good graces if you play to that need. So just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. Yes, once you know the needs, you can actually, I hate to say do a lot with them, but you're exactly right. Once you understand what's motivating the person, right? It's motivating the person to move towards something or to move away from something, then you can actually make sure you address that, is I think how I would phrase it. Make sure you address that when you're being a consultant. Now, that was a lot. Okay, let me pause. It was a lot. I'm sorry, but this is what people are leaving out. This is why we called it the secrets. Nobody talks about how to actually do this in a business setting. But when it comes down to it, the only thing you need to say is, it sounds like, and then you think in your head, what's the need? And then you say a phrase that actually kind of like talks about the need without using the actual need word itself. Yeah.
And as you mentioned, we're simplifying things, right? So that we're trying to be sticky in some ways, but there's many versions of like, it sounds like. I imagine you feeling this. Imagine you saying that. We heard Astrid saying, what I'm hearing you say is this, right? We're just trying to what's one, if you had to stick to one, what would be one that, you could practice, but there's many versions of this sentence.
Thanks, Agnes. Okay, let's move on to hack number 3, request. So this is where we get into the tactical empathy piece of it, right? We've understood the client, but that's not enough. We have to actually do something with it. So the next thing you do is you say, and you'd like, say a specific action, question mark. Remember, all of these have a question mark at the end of them. So an example, and this is a label and a request together, right? So it sounds like it's important that activist employees get their voices heard. And you'd like help creating a comprehensive employee listening strategy that might incorporate a shadow board, right? You notice how that's highly specific, right? You need this. Is this what you need me to do? This is what you want me to do. So you be very clear. And again, we do this because we have to move from understanding to action. You're meeting their needs. A few tips on this. Positive framing. Say what to do, not what not to do. Be very clear and specific. Send weekly safety stock reports, not report on inventory regularly. And if the client says no, you need to go back and do more needs gathering, because there's another need that's preventing them from saying yes. So an easy way of doing that is to ask, what else is important here for you? Or you can go back and do the needs analysis again. Yeah, so this whole thing is a cycle. One tip, Will, I know you love this one. It's the 70% rule. Client talks 70%. So wrapping all of it up, right? Client talks 70% of the time. When the consultant talks, 70% of the time should be questions and reflections. If you do that, you're on the right track. Okay, so to summarize the 3 hacks again, mirror the last 3 words, label the needs and the feelings. It sounds like, and then figure out what the client is actually requesting. And you'd like, question mark.
Questions. Do you want to
Questions.
if there's anything before we go into actually practicing and experimenting?
I'll stop sharing for a second.
Yeah, so I can see people's faces.
Exactly.
Okay, great. We put in the chat the cheat sheet where we have kind of a summary of what we mentioned and some variations of things. We also listed kind of some of the, you'll have in there, there's a link to a list of needs, a list of feelings. So again, we're giving you resources that might be helpful. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Why don't we go, Celine? Sounds like there's no question. Why don't we go into then the role play?
Let's do that. And so with the role play, let me share screen again so I can show you the setup. Well, for some reason, it's not showing up. Okay. So we're going to go into a role play, and this is going to be done in this bigger group. So what we're going to do is I'll play the client. One of you will play the consultant, and I will ask for volunteers. Role play for a minute, and then you hand the baton off to someone else who's a volunteer, and they'll keep going with the role play. No worries, Agnes will help you if you get stuck. So feel free to step up. So the situation is you're about to have a short meeting with the head of an underperforming business unit to get data about sales. You've already signed the contract with the CEO of the company. You're coming in, this is your first discovery meeting, right? Your goal is to get me to agree to share raw transaction level records from the past 3 years. This is a B2C play, tagged with demographic and behavioral data. So you need a big flat file. Success for you as a consultant in this meeting looks like getting the data in a usable format within a week to hit your deadlines voluntarily. It's a failure if you have to go ask somebody else to sit on me to get this information, right? Because you want me to cooperate without external coercion. Sounds good? Okay, let's.
Yeah.
Sorry, Agnes, go ahead.
Yeah, Celine, can you not share so that we can see who's?
Yeah, I'll stop sharing so that we can see faces. With that in mind, again, the goal is to get me to agree to share data in a usable form in a week. Who would like to, and in this, try to use mirroring and labeling. Just mirroring and labeling first. See how that works and we'll practice it. Who would like to volunteer? Michael. Yay. I see Michael's hand up. Awesome, Michael. All right. So the situation is I'm sitting at my office and we've got a meeting set up. You walk in.
Hi, Celine.
Hi, Michael.
Nice to see you.
It's good to see you too. So what's this about?
Oh, great to meet you. We were hired to help you with your strategy, and there's some information we need to get in order for us to do it.
So I'm actually not sure. Were you supposed to help me with my strategy? I actually wasn't sure about that.
Help you with your strategy?
Yeah. I mean, I got a notice. I got an email from Karen saying that you were going to come in, and I kind of have some context, but I'm not entirely sure. So I mean, it's great if you're helping me with the strategy for our business.
Can you tell me more about what you do need? Right now, what we need is we're actually working on multiple initiatives in order to goose sales over the next few months. We've got a long and storied business over here. Our unit sells outerwear, and it's been a challenging few years because of all of this global warming, I guess. So we've had to come up with a few initiatives to goose sales. So you're trying to come up with initiatives to goose sales.
It's we've got 3 in the pipeline. We're not exactly sure if they're the right thing though, because one thing we're wondering is, if the market's shrinking and our hero products are all outerwear, whether this is something we should be doubling down on, or whether we should be diversifying.
So you're trying to think about whether you should diversify. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, about whether we should diversify into other categories. It's not just about
pause, so we can pass the baton. Yay, Michael, you got us such a great start.
It was a good start.
Yeah. Do you wanna, who else would like to follow up on Michael's? Any volunteers? I know. Ray, awesome.
Ray. Hi, Ray.
Hi.
I missed you last night, but we get to talk now.
Yes, this will be wonderful.
Yeah, Roy and I are on a board together.
Sorry,
Ray. I'm sorry.
Ray.
Wrong Ray. I thought.
I can join that board. Sure, why not?
Come on in. All right, Ray, we're going to keep going. So the last thing was I was talking about initiatives, and I'm not sure about diversifying our categories.
Yes, how about those categories?
I'm not sure. We've currently got outerwear, but it seems like we don't want to go way out into left field and start selling bikinis, plus that's not the legacy of our business. But we're actually having difficulty deciding what we have permission to play in.
So you're really not sure what to play in?
Yeah, it's like outerwear, and then is it footwear? Do we have the expertise? Do we have the permission to play? Do we have the market access? Do we have the infrastructure to do it? So there's a lot of questions that we're trying to work through in deciding what these adjacent categories are that we need to enter.
What kind of adjacent categories?
Well, some of them could be things like, small ones would be accessories, beanies, gloves, things that help. But if we are trying to segue away from the cold weather stuff, maybe it's important for us to do something summer. So hiking gear.
Yeah, hiking, that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think?
I think all of those categories are be a possibility. It's going to just require understanding more about the market.
I think actually understanding the market, that's a good point. I mean, we've been going straight into brainstorm, but I do think the next stage is understanding the market. Have you ever has your firm done a bunch of understanding the market work?
Yes, we have done quite a bit actually in your particular category. We're known for that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Let's pause here. Ray, thank you.
Hey, Ray.
Thank you for stepping up. I appreciate it. Very brave. How did that, actually, I'm curious, how did that feel?
It a little bit discomforting, knowing that this is a whole group doing this, and I don't really know anybody here, but quite engaging as well, though. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the bravery in stepping up. It's kind of vulnerable to stand out here and do it, but this was we appreciate it. The group appreciates
Sure.
you're stepping up.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, and so Christophe said something. Agnes, is it okay if we transition to discussing this a little bit?
Yeah.
So what did people see happening? I see Christophe in the chat saying, when the client asks for your opinion, you seem to have won half the battle of building trust. Yes, that's right. What else? What else did you guys notice? Michael, I'd love to find out what you think about how that went in the beginning.
It was, I was not prepared for having to, I thought in my mind, I was coming in, you already knew what I was there for.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of got thrown a little bit by you just asking kind of, okay, now, start talking. But other than that, it felt good. I mean, I liked once we kind of got past that initial thing of kind of, okay, I got to remember what I'm supposed to get here. Then I thought it went well, and I felt it was good to just have you talk more.
Yeah. I think the initial setup was a little bit unclear, so I apologize for that. But it was good after you came in, and once you started asking me questions about what I was doing, about what I wanted, I could feel myself softening more towards you. And we didn't get to an ask in this. We didn't, and that wasn't part of the setup because we were focusing on mirroring and labeling. But if this had continued, I would have been happy to get there, like a little bit more, and I would have been happy to get there. I see Ramon, and then after that, Will. Ramon.
Yeah,
Hi.
thanks. So hi. So I didn't see the complete framework being applied. Maybe at the beginning a little bit, but then with Ray it was also okay at the beginning, and then it kind of went back to at least I saw myself very reflected on Ray without any of this framework. So kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah, so and you notice something that actually did happen and tends to happen in real life, Ramon. So I'm glad you pointed it out. The framework is useful when you are starting out, and it's a good fallback. And if you see things happening that mean that you understand the customer a little bit more, or the client a little bit more, and you can start playing with it the way I think Benjamin, you were doing, you can start going into middle portions or broader portions of what the client is saying.
Yeah.
Will, and then after that, Mona.
Celine, can I add?
Yes.
The question. I think, Raman, what I'm hearing you say is that part of the reason maybe that we shifted is that Celine ended up asking a lot of questions. So you're in a situation suddenly like she's talking, the client is talking, and then suddenly she brings it back to the, what do you think? Have you done this? Right? And so then you have choices. You could answer it if you feel like you fully understand and sympathizing, or you might say, you guys are the consultants, but you might say, yeah, I'm happy to answer, but it sounds like you still have some ambivalence, or I would love to understand better your situation. So again, you're pushing back the ball towards the client. If you feel like you still need some data gathering, you still feel like you haven't built enough rapport, right? So that's an option to do that. But the reason is that you may have seen not the framework being able to be applied in Ray's side. Is like Celine ended up kind of pushing back the ball towards Ray when she asked some of the questions.
And this is part of that 70% conversation, right? It's like 70% of the time the client should be talking. So if the client starts pushing it back to you and saying, yeah, so what kind of projects have you done? Instead of saying an option, right? Instead of saying, well, here are the projects that we've done, you can say, we've done a ton. In order to pull out the right ones for you, I'd love to find out more. Drop it back to them. Keep going, right? Will.
Yeah, so just the opening can be awkward when you first sit down with a client at a firm that you're already serving. And I think the natural inclination of a lot of us is to start off by saying, this is why I'm here. Let me tell you about this project. Let me tell you what we're trying to accomplish. And you end up being the first one to speak and just sets up an awkward dynamic. Whereas it's actually very powerful to flip that and using as a template, say, to start with, hey, I'm happy to fill you in on, why I asked for this meeting, but I don't want to just tell you a lot that you already know. What have you already heard about this effort? So that does a couple things. Number one, it sort of works to that 70-30 split, right? You're getting them to talk first, number one. So it just helps set up the dynamic of you're here to listen and not to talk at them. Also, you get insight into how it's being communicated internally, right? So maybe they're super prepped on it and that's useful information, or maybe they got a very slanted view. Oh, you're just here to like fire us or like, eliminate jobs, right? Maybe that's not what you're there for at all. So you understand, and you also get their take on it, right? And you get their emotions of it instead of them just listening at you for the first 3 or 4 minutes. So just, like, what have you heard about this effort? Or, what have you heard about why I asked for this meeting? One way to start those kinds of sessions.
Will, that's a great hack. So it's true. If you ever walk into a room and the first words out of your mouth are, I'm here because I need this, either you're in a position of very high power and the other person already knows they have to do what you ask them to do, or you're going to get in trouble. So find out first what they need, build a relationship, find out what they need. And then, so what happened in this meeting was initially, as the client, I was like, oh crap, consultants come in, they want something from me. I don't even know what's going on. I'm not sure I want to give it to them. And I was ready. Part of my brief here was I was going to actually push back and be like, either not give the data or give the data late or give the data in a form that you couldn't use, because I was going to dig in, but I wasn't going to dig in a way where the CEO could say, oh, you're not cooperating. I'd just be like, it's too hard. But over time, as the questions, like repair is possible, right? So you started asking questions, both of you, about what is it that you, like, what are you doing? What's going on with you? And you notice you didn't talk at all about the project that you were doing. You talked about my projects. Then I was like, okay, I'm interested. I'm interested enough to actually even ask for your help, possibly with my project. So you might have like started selling another gig. And yes.
Yeah, Mona.
And then Mona, sorry. Mona, is it okay to go to Mona first or?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Thank you. Mona.
Sure, it's building a little bit on, I think, what Bill, with what Will said, but it's, what oftentimes I see happening is, there's a different bubble over people's heads. Someone says, this is what we're trying to solve, and everybody interprets it differently, especially in the beginning. So it sounded a little bit like that's where Celine might have gone. And so it's, maybe it's an obvious comment, but it's always useful to just sort of dig into that and have that perspective. Well, the bubble over your head was this, the bubble over their head was this, and then you can either try to bring that together or highlight sort of or identify a more nuanced understanding of the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's what you're calling the bubble over their heads is the underlying needs and wants. And at some point, if you surface enough of them, there's always something there's usually something you can do, because the Venn overlap is usually a lot larger than we initially anticipate. Do we have time, Agnes, to address one more question?
One more question, we should move on to role play number 2.
Okay, very quickly. Giovanni asks, what if you're in front of someone who just would not talk? It can happen. Giovanni, do you want to say more? Has that happened to you in?
Yeah, well, sometimes you have someone who's like, just like a block of ice, and you try to talk to him and like chat or whatever, and the guy just wouldn't answer, like zero willingness to kind of talk and anything, Mm-hmm. And so you say, okay, well, you try invite him into something, you have maybe small talk to kind of try and unfreeze the situation. But there are like some people are like definitely frozen. Maybe they just had a fight with their wife or whatever, but it's like, it's like the door seems to be really closed, and it can be very difficult. It's quite rare because people like to talk generally, but it happened to me a few times.
So
do you
Agnes
want
is,
to ask in the audience? Do you want to ask in the audience?
yeah. Anybody have any tips for Giovanni in this situation? Somebody's a block of ice, doesn't respond at all.
Ray, you mentioned something. Do you want to share?
Oh, Wendy's raised her hand.
Okay, Wendy.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I often, when I run into situations like that, I typically try to make it more of a human type of an engagement and talk about something about myself or maybe current event that just happened that may not be too politically charged, so that we can find maybe a common ground to break the ice, and then eventually ease into why I'm there for the meeting.
Ray, so what Ray's talking about is moving the conversation to a lower stakes situation and also trying to find points of personal connection. So it's maybe it's not something to talk about that's quite so dangerous for the other person. And then Wendy and then Astrid.
Yeah, I'm a quite high energy person. And so what I've learned is that when someone is not ready to speak, I need to slow down and lower my tone and get more at their pace, because I'm normally like this and I talk with my hands, right? And so the mirroring is not only using words, it's mirroring to the whole system. I've studied a lot of neurolinguistics. And so one of the other hacks that I've learned since we're all on Zoom is that the screen image also communicates to the brain. So if I'm speaking with you, Celine, our faces are about the same size. And yes, if I'm talking to you, I would move forward so that your brain would see my head. So these kind of tricks, and I've started using it with teams, where when we start a meeting, I invite everybody to adjust their cameras so that the faces look similar. And those are ways to create more safety. And because otherwise, if I'm with someone that's not going to talk, my normal way of being will be, I'll be 70 and they'll be 30, right? So I have to consciously dial it back.
Wendy, you raise great points. Mirroring is our entire presence, not just the voice. And that's a 202 level thing. So you're advanced too. Fantastic. So
yeah, I love studying this. Thank you. And I also just want to acknowledge how impressed I am with how you bring it down to very actionable techniques. I really appreciate that. Thank
Wendy,
you.
that makes me feel so good. We worked super hard on this because we find there are very few techniques that are actionable.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
I appreciate it. I'm taking that feedback. Thank you. Astrid. One last comment and then we have to move on, but thank you.
Definitely want to echo what Wendy said about how you're bringing it all, to a level for us to understand. What I do with all my projects is that I ask the project sponsor to give me some color about everyone that I'm going to be interacting with. And I will have generally known, oh, this person is hard to get through, or this person is opposed to the project or whatever. And then generally in the past, in person, I would have always asked, what is like an areas of personal interest of that person. And maybe it's an object in their office that I can start by reflecting on that. Or if it's a picture of their family, wow, what a beautiful family. And it sort of melts the ice a little bit. And I love what Wendy said about Zoom, because I'm still trying to figure out how to do that in Zoom, but that has been my techniques in the past.
Fantastic. Thank you, Astrid, for that comment. And then I want to go to something that Ali is saying in the chat. I know we have to move on, and yes, but just one final thing. Ali, you'd said that's happened to me when dealing with middle managers who feel threatened by my being there. We've talked about icebreakers. We've talked about common ground. Another thing I'll talk about is going back to needs, right? There is a need of this middle manager that is not being met. The middle manager hasn't said it, but they have a need for safety. That's not happening because you're there. And that's the reason why they're not talking to you, is my guess. So if you can find a way to promise them that safety, or to assure them of that safety, maybe you can't promise it, but you can signal that your intent is not to jeopardize them, maybe they'll open up. So Giovanni, I hope that answers your question. And Agnes, shall we move on?
Yeah, just as a wrap up, I love all the comments that you and tips that you're sharing. And, it's in a way to create the psychological safety, in the room, and all those are applicable. Yeah. Should we go to?
Yes, I'm going to share screen again, and we'll go to our second role play. All right, so we've debriefed it. Let me enter slide, show. Okay, the second role play is a little bit different. This one, you're going to be going into breakout rooms. So if you can't stay until the end of this, or until the end of the role play, go ahead and leave first, because we're going to be putting people into pairs. So you'll go into breakout rooms in pairs. If we have odd numbers, Megan, I'm not sure, we will have a room with 3 people. The roles in those rooms will be client, consultant, and if you're in a trio, observer. We'll have time to only do the role play once, so we won't switch roles, but you'll learn a lot in any role. As a client, it's rare that we get to sit in the client seat, so it's very interesting to see what feelings come up in you, and the observer gets to provide valuable feedback. So what's going to happen is you're going to go into your rooms. We're going to drop in the chat the roles, the client role, the consultant role, and the observer role. Read only your role, otherwise it's no fun. 3 minutes to read, 7 minutes to role play, that gets you to 10 minutes, and then 5 minutes debrief, all of this in your rooms. So 10 minutes to read and role play, 5 minutes to debrief in your room. Some tips: make the situation realistic. If you, as a client, if you feel like you're going to flip, go ahead and give in to what they want. And because this is a real situation, different rooms will have clients flipping at different levels of empathy. So the consultant is going to have to go figure that out. And in this, it might be an industry you don't normally serve. Just assume you have the skill set to serve the client. Yeah. So Megan, do we have the breakout rooms ready? And thank you, Megan, for helping us out with this.
We do have them ready. You might experience some shuffling around if people are, still leaving. And do not be surprised if you see me popping in and out of your breakout room just to keep, see how things are going. So
Sorry, Celine, do we need to share the instructions before we put people in breakout rooms so they can see it?
Yes, I'll stick the instructions in the chat right now. Observer instructions. Should have done this before. So observer, read that. Client.
So only click on your role after you're in the breakout room and you decide which one you are so that you don't see the other side. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and decide quickly so that you can spend more time.
Okay, we're missing you. Okay, great. So you have the observer, client, and consultant.
Okay.
All right. And I'll be floating around the rooms to check in, make sure everything's going okay.
All right. Wonderful. I love it. I'm just getting people into rooms now. Who's there? All right, away we go, folks.
Good luck. See you back soon.
And I'm going to broadcast a message to everybody with those links again, just in case they can't get in the chat. They've recently changed that.
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Megan, Megan, you
Wendy,
have Dean.
You're
Dean,
still in.
Megan, you have Dean Lindo by himself in room 3. So.
Oh no! Oh, his
Wendy
person.
just joined.
Okay.
So
Let me
maybe
see. I'll move him
to down to the room. Yeah.
And Agnes, are you taking care of timing on this so we can set reminders? Thank you so much.
That's interesting. Okay, room 2. Okay, he's now in room 2 then.
Oh no, they requested access. 1 second.
Wait, why?
There you
Okay, I'm gonna broadcast this message to all. Let's just.
Did you just give access, Celine?
Yeah, I just gave access.
Okay, I just say.
What's interesting? Let's not. All right, let's try it one more time.
What drums are you playing, Megan?
I don't know why it is so loud to you, Will. My keyboard is incredibly loud to Will. I don't know why. I'm going to try to get my, I do have a mouse for this, so I'll try to dig that out. I haven't used it in many years, but I think it'll still work.
Well, you're playing the bongos over there.
I wish I had room for a drum set, but I do not. So I just live it out with my keyboard. Okay, great. So they have what they need. Let's just make sure everybody's doing well. I'm going to take a quick little, oh, room 7 has no one. Okay, good. All right, just give me 1 second, and then I'm going to start kind of going in and out and seeing how things are going. Just 1 minute.
Oh, I forgot to say thank you before she left. Will, how are you and how's this going so far? Any feedback pointers?
Things great. Great discussion. I think the people were engaged on it. I think we had a pretty good number of people staying on, which is always a good metric that people aren't dropping off. And I found it very actionable advice. So nice job, both of you. Thank you.
Fantastic, Will.
Yeah.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is great.
Oh, John is here.
John,
hi, John. Were you in a room before? Or?
And John, you're on mute. So
No, I had a meeting. I had a meeting before, so I was just joining because we had an hour and a half, and so I was trying to join the last 30 minutes.
Sure.
So I missed the first hour.
You want to put him into one room and just tell him that he's an observer, Celine?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. You want to do that, Celine? All right, John.
Yeah.
We'll be sending out, John. We'll be sending out the recording so you can catch the first section and the presentation. And for now, you can join one of the rooms and kind of observe the discussion.
Yeah, John, I'll put you into room 1, and so you'll just be watching Andrea and Astrid playing a client consultant situation. And then you can provide feedback.
Okay, super.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much.
How is your podcast going, by the way?
To be honest, we've been working on all of the stuff like this.
Yeah.
And less on the podcast. It takes more time than I thought, Will. I don't know how you do it. You pump out so many.
I know. We admire your consistency. It's something that we're putting it on the back burner right now.
Well, that's very kind. So we just launched a page on the Umbrex website that includes links to all of the podcasts by Umbrex members. Let me just check to see if we have yours. Do you have some episodes out?
We do have some episodes out. Right. I'm not sure if we're on that page. So let me.
I'm checking right now. Let me see here. We got Unleashed. No, we don't have it. We need to add you. Okay. So what's?
Do you want to send your?
Yeah, send me a link to the show.
I'll send you a link.
And we'll get it added. And
sounds good.
Yeah, are you? But you guys aren't doing an interview show, right? You're doing like a content show where it's the two of you saying stuff.
We're actually doing interview shows.
Oh, you are doing an interview show.
Yeah. Right. So we're interviewing coaches, consultants, anybody with hacks. But our bent is precisely this, just making all of the soft, touchy-feely stuff, EQ, really actionable.
Yeah. So, and is the barrier for you? Oh, so you're doing hacks?
I love it.
Nice. Yes. And I was going to answer, Will. I was like, until you did the eyebrow raise, I was like, yeah, he's so interested. Yeah, we're doing hacks. And the barrier has been, quite frankly, just bandwidth.
Is the bandwidth more a matter of your time to do the episodes or to do all the processing and editing and posting and so forth?
It's probably the latter, because the interviews themselves don't take a huge amount of time. So outsourcing would be great.
So I know someone who would be happy to do it for you. Henrietta, she's been editing our blog for years. For the last year, she's been doing everything on my podcast. So I just upload the recording. I just do the recording. I put it in Dropbox. She takes care of everything else. She edits the tracks together. She uploads it to Libsyn. She writes the show notes. She posts it. And it makes life a lot easier, because then all you two need to do is show up.
Show up, talk to the person.
Schedule, show up, upload it, and then you're done. Right.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, I'd be happy to have Henrietta have, a couple extra hours of work. I think I pay her $25 an hour, and each episode, I don't even really pay that much attention, but I think she maybe spends 2 hours per episode, something like that, because she'll upload it. She'll get a transcript made if you need that. She, edits the tracks together. She doesn't do heavy duty editing. But if you're interested, I'm happy to introduce you. She'd probably be happy to have an extra couple hours of work per week. And I just pay her via PayPal. She's based in Canada, so PayPal is easier.
We are so helpful. Thank you so much. That would really problem solve.
Yeah.
Our barrier.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'd love to remove the barriers, and then you can focus on the actual value added part of doing the episodes, and then that's easy, right? You just have 1 hour a week on your calendar.
That's fantastic. I love what you did too, which was the query, the problems, the honing in on the specific problem, and then offering the solve. I love it.
So, and what are you hoping to achieve with it? Is it more about building an audience, or more just about building the connection with that guest?
It's primarily building an audience, building a connection with the guest. We have networks. It's letting people see our approach.
Yeah,
I think is the key thing, because coaching, consulting, it's really hard coaching, especially in workshops, people just don't have a clue what's happening within that envelope.
Yeah. All right. Fantastic. Well, I'd love to, check out some of your episodes.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. Thank you so
Cool.
much for that recommendation.
Yeah.
Now, Agnes, are we keeping track of the 10 minutes?
I am keeping track. I gave them now another 2 minutes. I don't know, Megan, if you, was I the only one keeping track of time? I just want to check.
I've been keeping track of if everyone has what they need.
Okay.
And so far we're good.
So I would just, I'm going to give them, I'm going to broadcast that they have, do I have podcasts? Abeti? I do. Okay. I'm going to say that they have 2 minutes, and then finish the role play, and then they'll go.
Great.
I'm going to drop into a room just to see what's going on. Make sure
That sounds
things are
good.
okay.
They seem pretty far well on their way from what I've seen. So
good.
it's, it seems to be going well. Let's
Fantastic.
see.
People were very engaged. It's great.
And I'd love to have you a guest on my show, Agnes.
I know. Thank you so much for your kind invitation. I still have that invitation, so I would love to come up. Yeah.
All right.
I have your link, so I'll try to schedule something in the next month or so, wherever
Great.
you have a slot.
I've got time in February right now. So right now I'm pretty much booked through January. So
Yeah, February is definitely better for me for sure. So let me put a note. Sure.
all right. So you're gonna put.
I heard that you also, I don't know how is that going, but you are in touch with, jumping on. Celine put you in touch with the chairman of
Agrovision.
Agrovision.
Yeah. Yes. And yeah. And it looks like we'll do something small for them. Yeah. Yeah. So that was great. All right. Oh, I'm just gonna actually stop recording here because I think we don't want to have it people like watching the whole breakout session. We'll give them the
Yes,
upfront part.
yes.
So I'm just going to stop
Okay.
recording.
Are you able to edit some of the, or not?
Not very easily.
Okay.
So I'm just going to stop